Hi guys, how you doing? My name's Ant. I'm one of the mixers here at VCA, and because of our whole COVID situation, we can't get you guys in to actually show you bits and pieces that you really do need to know. So hence we are sitting in my home studio here at home where I do a lot of work, and you get to see my enormous lockdown hair as well too. So it's a win-win situation for everyone. Right, however, what we're going to do today is I would like to talk to you about what you need to do, or the things you need to do before you come downstairs to audio and before we can do our sound mixing for you. Okay? Now, when you finish your edit, Gordon will make for you an AAF file. And what an AAF file is, it's a file that contains all the audio from your edit, from your movie that you're making, in place on separate tracks, exactly how you left them in the Avid, okay? And then we import that file into our Pro Tools system downstairs, and off we go, essentially. Okay? Now, we work with Pro Tools downstairs. I don't know whether any of you have heard of that name, but what Pro Tools is, it is essentially an audio Avid, okay? It's the same as the Avid without the video stuff, and we can do a lot more to the audio than you can upstairs in the Avid, okay? We can manipulate things a lot more, and we can do a lot of fun stuff as well too, which I'll show you in another clip. But what I want to show you today is what an AAF file looks like when it comes in, and then what we do with it when we start mixing with you, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do, as I said, is bring in an AAF file from a short film that I mixed a really long time ago, not a VCA film, another film, and then we'll be able to see what it does when it comes into our timeline. Now, I don't need all of those bits and pieces. I just need, let's say, the first 5 tracks or so. That'll do me. And I'll say OK, and it will ask me a question, to which I will say no, and I will also say no to that. Thank you very much. Go away. Now, can you actually see what's happening there? It's actually redrawing all the audio in the timeline on the screen as we speak. So you can see all the rectangles and the squares filling up with the waveform and the colours and everything coming along. That's exactly how the editor left it when he finished doing his edit and he sent it to me to start mixing his film. Okay, so we're nearly there. Lots of things drawn up. And ta-da, there we go. One AAF imported into Pro Tools. Okay, so what we're looking at is my Pro Tools template that I have, and each of the mixes have something slightly similar to this. Of course, mine's better. It's slightly similar to this, where we actually have things all set out in a way that we like to work. Okay? Now, if I was to look at this, this particular AAF and the way that this person's done this track lay, I can see that there's a few problems straight away. And what I mean by that is that they haven't worked in a system, okay? So I can look at this and I can see that they've got some dialogue here, and he's got 2 tracks of music here, and there's 2 tracks of music down here as well too, and I don't really know what that is because it's just labelled audio 3, so they could be sound effects or they could be dialogue, and that's probably a sound effect, but there's something up here that looks like it could be music, but I don't know what it is. This person hasn't really worked in a system, okay? And it's really, really important to work in such a way that you know where everything is and you can get to it quickly because it benefits us both, all right? Now, what I mean by working in a system is if you have a group of tracks that are just dedicated to doing dialogue, you have another group of tracks that are just dedicated to doing sound effects, you have another group of tracks that are just dedicated to doing atmospheres, and you have another group of tracks that are just dedicated to music, okay? Because that way you know where everything is. So when you come to your audio session and your AAF lines up like that, and I say to you, right, where are your dialogue? And you can turn to me and say, right, they're on tracks 1 to 4, Ant. I'll say, fantastic, and I'll highlight them, and I'll simply drag them into the session, and then we're good to go. So all that makes life very easy. Otherwise, I'll have to pick through all of that and work out what bits are dialogue, what bits are music, what bits are effects, and so on. And that just chews into your mixing time because you don't have a lot of time with us. And the more time that we can spend creatively doing fun stuff rather than doing housekeeping stuff, it's nowhere near as much fun, and you don't get as much out of the day or as much for your film as perhaps you'd really, really like. Okay? So, what I'll do is now I'll just get rid of these tracks so I don't need to see them, and they are such a mess, we don't want them. But if only we had a track lay that we could look at that was laid out nicely, and you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, wait, here's one. Didn't see that coming, did you? Anyway, this is a dummy track lay that I've actually made up a little bit earlier on today. As the joke goes, here's one I prepared earlier. So what you can see is that I've actually got tracks assigned to certain things, as I said before. So these first 6 tracks here are all purely for dialogue, okay? And on those tracks, I have all my dialogue bits and pieces that are just isolated to those areas. One component I didn't mention is voiceover, okay? Voiceover or narration. So there's a voiceover track, and there's the voiceover bits and pieces. They're not scattered around all over the place and hard to find, okay? So going further down the line, you can see that I have sound effects. And by sound effects, I mean, I'll just highlight those for you. By sound effects, I mean things like door closes, door opens, mobile phone rings, car starts, car stops, that sort of stuff, okay? Things that happen in an instant rather than for the duration of the scene, okay? For the duration of the scene type stuff, I would have these Atmos tracks here, okay? And as you can see there, they're going for the duration of the scene. Something I should point out, which I didn't point out earlier, is these vertical yellow lines here that I've got on the screen. I put those in to show me where the start and the end of a scene is, okay? And that works for a number of different reasons, but you can see, well, you can see where the scenes are, and I can get to them really, really quickly. Now, the other thing that I should mention is a term that you may have heard of called checkerboarding, okay? Now, checkerboarding comes from working before digital audio systems like this, when you were working on tape, and it was impossible to do this really quickly. It was impossible to move a piece of audio around. Whoops, I just copied it. What I meant to do was that, okay? I can move that quickly and simply, but when everything was on tape, you couldn't do that, okay? It meant re-recording things. The name comes from, like a chessboard, how all the alternate colours and all the alternate squares go black, white, black, white, black, white. The same thing happens with a scene here, okay? So this is one scene here, this is another scene here, and this is a third scene. Whoops, this is a third scene there, okay? If all the dialogue was on one track, let's say that our friend here was just on that track, okay? And they're all butted up against each other. If this one was really soft and this one was really loud, that one was really loud, I'd have to have the level up quite loud to hear that track. So what do you think would happen when we got to that bit there? It would all be incredibly loud. So that's why we want you to checkerboard things so things aren't butting up against each other. Okay? So I can have things really loud there, I can blend it out easily there, and then I can go on to the next scene there. I hope that makes sense, because it is a much easier way of working, and it just makes things a lot neater, okay? And a lot simpler to mix as well too. And you can see down here, I've also got things overlapping into the scene. On these music tracks here that I've got there, there's our 2 music tracks, and I'll just make them perhaps a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm talking about. The music starts at the start of the scene and it wanders over into the very start of the next scene, and I pick up another music track here, okay? They may be completely different, so if they're on separate tracks and not all on the same track, like they would be there, it just makes it so much easier to mix, okay? So what you need to take away from this is work in a system of all the different components and checkerboard your stuff, checkerboard your scenes like that. Have a dedicated number of dialogue tracks, have a dedicated number of sound effects tracks, and have a dedicated number of Atmos tracks, if you like, and have a dedicated number of music tracks, and put all your bits and pieces there, okay? And it just makes life so much easier to mix. All right, that's it for this clip. There's going to be some other clips later on that will be talking about the different sounds and the different things that we can do when we're mixing downstairs and what we can get from that. So I will see you then. Thanks for watching.